Hello, welcome to the Moodle plugin StudentQuiz. This is a tutorial for teachers. Students like quizzes to prepare for exams. However, it's hard for teachers to provide all the questions needed for many self-assessments and exams. That's where the Moodle plugin StudentQuiz comes in. The basic idea is to let students create their own question pool collaboratively. For this, students take the Moodle driver's seat and Moodle becomes more student-driven. Even if an individual student contributes a few questions only, a larger cohort could easily build up an extensive question pool. Students can then filter sets of questions and run them as quizzes. They can rate and comment the questions, which improves the quality of the question pool. StudentQuiz collects usage data for each question and ranks students based on their contribution and learning progress. The students' names can be displayed or kept anonymous. StudentQuiz is a community activity, but also supports every participating student. A personal learning assistant shows the individual learning progress and compares this with the community. The questions created become part of the Moodle question bank and can be reused in standard Moodle quizzes. And last, StudentQuiz was developed at the University of Applied Sciences Rapperswil in Switzerland. It's open source and can be downloaded at the Moodle plugin directory. Let's see how StudentQuiz works. I'm enrolled as a teacher in this StudentQuiz demo course. Adding a StudentQuiz activity is just the normal procedure of adding an activity, turn editing on, pick add an activity or resource, and here I select StudentQuiz. Of course, plugin StudentQuiz has to be installed by your Moodle administrator first. I assign a name, let's call it Demo StudentQuiz. Please pay attention to the ranking settings. By default, student names are displayed to teachers only and not to fellow students. Also, by default, questions created are available for the enrolled users right away. You might want to turn off this option if you want to verify questions before they become public. StudentQuiz ranks students based on their contribution and learning progress. This is based on some point factors. For the contribution, a default of 10 points is given for each created question. An additional default of 5 points is given for each question when it becomes approved by the teacher. And finally, in order to foster good quality questions, 3 points are given for each star received from the community rating. There are also points given for the learning progress. A student can answer a question as often as he or she likes, whereby the last answer pays 2 points if it's correct, and a penalty of -1 point if it's incorrect. As you see, you can change the numbers according to your strategy. Last, you can exclude user roles from participating in the ranking. For example, a teacher might contribute and answer questions as well, but he or she doesn't want to show up in the ranking. Please also pay attention to the question settings. You might want to restrict your StudentQuiz set to particular question types only. By default, all available question types are allowed. Rating of questions is enforced by default, which means that after a student answered a question, he or she is forced to rate this question. And commenting is not enforced, so it's optional for the student to leave a comment after answering. Click Save and Display. I'm now inside the StudentQuiz activity. There are no questions in the StudentQuiz yet, and the only option is to create a first question. This could be done by a student or teacher. Let's provide a first question. I click on Create New Question. For this demo, let's create a simple true-false question. Add. And this should be about StudentQuiz collaboration. And my question text is StudentQuiz enables students to create their own question pools collaboratively. Is this statement true or false? I hope you agree that this is true. And I save this question. StudentQuiz looks differently now. I have this question in the question content area, and there are quite many data not yet available because this question was never answered. Let's have a look at the student's perspective now. In this browser, I'm enrolled as student 01. I enter this course and I pick our activity demo student quiz. And this is a question that was created by the teacher. And as we run this student quiz anonymous, you can see that the name of the teacher is not displayed. Let's create a question as a student, create new question. And I also do a true-false question. And this is about student quiz origin. And my question text is: student quiz was developed at the University of Applied Sciences, Rapperswil. Is this statement true or false? And I click on Save. As you can see, this question, student quiz origin, belongs to the student. That's why the student can view, edit, or delete his or her own question. He or she cannot do so with the student quiz collaboration question because this was created by another user. Student 1 can also see that there are 2 questions right now in the question pool which he has never answered. That's why this bar here is yellow. And the student has contributed 1 question which is right now in the status new or changed. That's why the second bar here is also yellow. And in the ranking table, our student sees that he is right now number 1 with 10 points. The 10 points given for the creation of a question. Of course, this here, anonymized, is the teacher who was also assigned 10 points. Let's go back to the teacher's view. As a teacher, I can see the author name. So I see this question is from student 01. This little square means it's a new question. And now I like to verify if this is a correct question. I click on Preview. And this is a preview window. Student quiz was developed at the University of Applied Sciences, Rapperswil. Is this true or false? This is definitely true. I check. And oops, I see that our student made a configuration mistake. The statement is true, but he configured false. So that's why I don't agree with this question and I assign a disapproved to this question. Now this question became disapproved. Let's go back to the student's view. And now our student sees this question is disapproved. He can also see this in his contribution bar. He provided 1 question which is right now in the status disapproved. Now because the question is in the status disapproved, the student cannot change it anymore. Student can only delete this question or view it in the preview. Let's assume the teacher asks the student to change the question. Then what the teacher can do, I go back to the teacher and now I set this status. I click on this disapproved cross and I set this status to change state. Now it is in status change, and going back to the student's view, it's changed now, so the student has control again. He can edit the question and now he probably wants to set this to true, save his question. Okay, now we go back to the iteration. The teacher now has to change the state again and we know it's correct now, but I can now change the status to approved, change state. Now the question is approved, and student's view again, the question is approved, the bar becomes green. We have now 1 approved question, and the ranking. We have 10 points for the creation of a question plus another 5 points for the approval given by the teacher. As a teacher, you might already have a set of questions which you like to import in your student quiz. I can do so as a teacher in my teacher's browser here. I go to Question Bank Import and I prepared a Moodle XML formatted file containing some questions that I would like to import. Click Import. There are quite many new questions. 1 is approved, the one from my student. All the others are not yet approved. And I can also do bulk approvals. I would like to approve all questions but the one from the student. And now I can go to change state, where there is a bulk approval, and all these questions selected, I would like to change them to approved. And now I'm heading the ranking list, teacher Frank, with 105 points. This is based on 7 questions contributed, 7 times 10, plus 7 approvals of 5 points each, so that gives me 105 points. We have not answered questions yet. Let us do this next as a student. So here I refresh the student screen, and there are some fast filters. I can filter for unanswered questions, for new, approved, and so on questions. I like to show the show more, where you see all the filtering options. You can use multiple filters, and I'm now looking for questions that somehow contain the string Rapperswil. Apply the filter, and there are 2 questions left. And now I would like to run the quiz with these 2 questions. Click Start Quiz. And the first question, University of Applied Science, Rapperswil is located at. I know we are at Lake Zurich, but let me pick Lake Geneva here by mistake. I check this question. It's not correct, of course, I knew. And I like to place a comment. This didn't teach me much about StudentQuiz. Don't like this question. I give it only 1 star. Add this comment, and I move on to the next question. StudentQuiz was developed at the University of Applied Sciences Rapperswil. This is true. And I check on this question. Yes, the answer is correct. I like this somewhat better. I give it 2 stars. By the way, I'm forced to rate. That was our configuration. So if I would not have rated this, I would not be able to move around, to navigate from question to question. So we are already done, finish, and now I can see some usage data. I see that this question, HSR location, I answered this 1 time and my last answer was not correct. That's why the difficulty right now is the highest. I have 5 bulks, which means very difficult for me. Well, I had only 1 try so far, and I assigned 1 star to it. I was better on the second question here. I answered it 1 time and my last answer was correct. That's why right now, based on this data, this is very easy for me, and I gave it 2 stars. The progress bar is now also interesting. There was 1 correct last answer, that's the green area here. There was 1 incorrect last answer, the red area, and there are 6 questions available, never been answered. I accumulated now 22 points. If I don't understand the math behind it anymore, I can click here on More, and I see I'm positioned second, and I created 1 question, 10 points given. That question is approved. That was another 5 points. I received 2 stars for this question from the community, which is based on my own rating right now. I'm the community right now. Each of the stars is worth 3 points, so that gives me 6. And I had 1 correct answer plus 2. I had 1 incorrect answer minus 1. And I'm done right now with 13%. I answered 1 question out of 7, so that is 13% of all the questions being answered. To compare myself with my community, I can see my position here in the ranking table. But there's also a statistics page where the left column shows my personal statistics and the right column shows the community statistics. I can see how many questions I contributed, how many I answered correctly, what my personal progress is, and I compare my personal data to the averaged usage data of my community. Now, once StudentQuiz runs for a while, your question table might look like this. In this case, I have a quiz with 566 questions, and each question was answered multiple times by different students. This is a view of John Doe, and please distinguish the blue and the yellow color. For example, John Doe rated this question with 3 stars, and the blue background means that was a community rating. And for example, we can see here that John Doe rated 4 stars, but the community rated only 3 stars. Or here, John Doe rated 2 stars only, but the community rated somewhat better. The same with the difficulty. So this was 3 bulks difficult for John Doe, but for the community it was even more difficult. So we have the comparison as well on the question level between a single user and his community. We hope you and your students will find StudentQuiz useful. There are many resources available for you in the StudentQuiz demo course here at studentquiz.hsr.ch. You're welcome to register an account there. And if you like StudentQuiz, please like us in the Moodle plugin directory and spread the news. Thank you for listening.